This is a recollection of events I need to get off my chest. There's no one close to me anymore. Since becoming an adult, I moved to Georgia and lost touch with everyone back home. I haven't made many friends here either, at least no one close enough to take me seriously. Maybe this is the best place to let it all out. No judgment, no one to laugh at me or call me an idiot. So here it goes. I used to live in a rural part of Arkansas, surrounded by nothing but dirt, fields, and woods. The nearest supermarket was more than 30 minutes away, and at most, there was a rundown Quick Mart stationed between the two locations. My father ran a farm, so we lived on an expansive plot of land. The house was 2 stories, and the top floor had big windows overlooking the fields. My aunt lived with us, along with my grandfather. He wasn't doing well, his mind was slipping away, and Alzheimer's had taken hold. He often didn't remember who we were. It was hard. My aunt and I clung to each other, despite being my father's younger sister. She was only a couple of years older than me. My grandfather had run around a lot in his younger days. As for my dad, he was battling an addiction with alcohol, though, if I'm being honest, it wasn't a battle he was winning. Still, I tried to be hopeful. Those years were rough, and I think that made my aunt and me more susceptible to things that we endured that summer. We were just kids, only 14 and 16. We were scared of everything. It didn't help that we spent our free time watching satirical horror videos or staying up late playing scary games. We fed into our paranoia, willingly or not. The house was old and creaky, with wooden panels lining the exterior and matching walls inside. It was big, enough for my aunt and me to deem hide-and-seek worthy even at our age. We did a lot of childish stuff like that. The night it all started, we were up late as usual. It was around 2 a.m. We had been binging storytime videos on YouTube and were in the middle of an adult coloring sheet contest. Then, that feeling crept in, the kind that makes your blood run cold, the hairs on your arms stand. It felt as if we were being watched. Figuring it was only paranoia stemming from playing until dawn earlier that night, we brushed it off. Maybe that was all it was, but no matter how much we reasoned with ourselves, we couldn't shake the feeling. Sitting at the rounded table with my aunt directly beside me, I quickly glanced at the vent behind me.
I feel like there's something watching us from the vent.
My aunt snapped her head toward me, her voice exasperated.
Bro, why would you say that?
That color drained from her face, tossing all rationality out the window. We decided the best course of action was to start taping our coloring sheets over the upstairs vents. Then just like that, the feeling lifted, like we had somehow sealed away whatever was watching us. The coloring sheets stayed up for days until my dad found them and took them down, thinking we were just being goofy. By then, the strange feeling had faded and life went back to normal, or so we had led ourselves to believe. The next occurrence was while playing hide and seek. The house was full of good hiding spots, like small nooks and crawl spaces, just big enough to squeeze into if you tried hard enough. It was my turn to hide. I went downstairs to the pantry closet. My usual spot was on a large wooden pantry shelf, where I'd stack cans in front of myself to stay hidden. But I wanted to change it up. We had played so many times that my usual hiding places were too predictable. That's when I saw it. A medium-sized air vent behind one of the shelves. It had just enough space that I could crawl in, maybe even some room to spare. It's probably worth mentioning that we would only play hide and seek in the dark. Unlatching the vent, I crawled in, carefully replacing the cover behind me. The space was cramped, but manageable. I felt a surge of pride. There was no way she would find me here. To add on to it, it was pitch black inside, making it even easier to stay hidden. I held my breath and listened. The countdown ended. Footsteps echoed through the house, doors opening and closing. Then the sound drew closer. I stayed perfectly still. A soft glow trickled through the cracks of the door as she peered in. I could just barely see her eyes scanning the room. She'd stood there momentarily, directly in front of me, the vent, and from my curled up position, she looked taller than usual looming. As she turned to leave, I could see her hesitate. Slowly, she knelt down and snapped the vent latch shut. I held my breath. A wave of panic hit me. Was she messing with me? Did she actually not know I was in here? She walked away and I let out a shaky exhale. I stayed curled up in the vent, convinced she was bluffing, but then it dawned on me. It had been over 20 minutes. A terrible realization sank in. She wasn't coming back. She didn't know I was in here. I pressed my palms flat against the vent, pushed on the metal. There was no give. As I tried to maneuver myself around, I quickly discovered that it was impossible to exert enough strength to make it bulge. And then I felt it. A presence. Something watching, staring at me. Every bit of air left my lungs. My stomach twisted into tight knots. Slowly, I shifted my eyes to the side. Darkness. I craned my neck, looking over my shoulder. More darkness. Except for a faint glint light reflecting off something's eyes. They shifted rapidly, darting from side to side. Panic surged through me as I frantically clawed and shoved against the vent, throwing my weight into it with all my strength. But I was wedged in too tightly. My body screamed at me to push harder, but no matter how much I struggled, it wouldn't budge. A breath, warm and slow, pulls out, dense and damp, creeping around my neck like unseen fingers that linger too long. A shrill cry tore from my throat. My limbs burned, metal biting into my skin as I clawed frantically. Help!
The vent pantry. I'm stuck.
A skittering shuffle closed in behind me. The thing shifted, creeping closer. Its presence coiled around me, suffocating, its breath hotter than before, tinged with the stench of rot. Suddenly, the door flung open. I could see the silhouette of my aunt as she knelt down, fumbling with the vent latch. And then light feathered footsteps scurried away, retreating deeper into the vents, carrying its putrid scent with it. I bolted out, gasping, trembling.
Something was in there. It was watching me, breathing. I swear, I felt it breathing.
She paled.
You're lying. Tell me you're lying.
I'm not.
I gasped out, clutched my chest. Her face twisted fear, denial, something desperate clawing at the edges of her expression. She swallowed hard, but it did nothing to steady her shaking hands that balled into fists. That night, we covered the pantry vent with coloring sheets and swore never to do it again. We tried, desperately, to rationalize it. Maybe the darkness was playing tricks on us. Maybe we had let fear take control, let paranoia consume us. But deep down, we knew the truth. We never played hide and seek again. A few weeks had passed. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but I still felt it, watching. I would wake up multiple times throughout the night, convinced I saw eyes staring at me. I'd force myself to sleep, telling myself it wasn't real, until that night. I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Most nights we went together, but it was late, and my aunt was fast asleep. Guilt gnawed at me, so I didn't wake her. Instead, I stood in the doorway, staring into the dark, forcing myself to move. I shook my hands at my sides, trying to shake off the nerves, then took a step forward. The moment my foot passed the threshold, it landed on something. A crinkle sounded beneath my foot, sharp, sudden. I looked down, squinting my eyes to make out the foreign object, a coloring sheet, the one from the pantry vent. I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood, and a cold sweat broke out across my skin, heavy and suffocating. Terror gripped me, paralyzing every muscle as the air seemed to thicken, pressing in around me. I knew if I looked up, I'd meet its gaze, those eyes burning into me like a predator. In that instant, I knew I was its prey. My body went into fight or flight mode, and I squeezed my eyes shut, spinning around and running without a second thought. Thud, then darkness. Slowly, my eyes fluttered open, the cold metal biting into my skin. Reluctantly, I raised my head, every muscle in my body taut with fear. The heavy silence loomed around me, suffocating and thick. My breath caught in my throat as I scanned the cramped space. I was inside the vent. Everything you're reading, it's all journal entries. My therapist suggested I start writing things down, a way to process the trauma without having to say it out loud. I didn't tell her everything and kept most details vague, which more than likely was obvious. At first, it helped, more than I had initially expected, but then I started writing about that summer, about the thing I saw in the vent, and that's when it started again. Even now, as I write this, I can feel it, watching, waiting. I've gathered all my entries, but I'm not sure what good they'll truly do for me, or anyone else. I don't think I have much time left. So, I decided to leave. I'm burning everything, the journals, the house, every trace of this nightmare, every word that has acknowledged this creature. Silence doesn't mean I'm gone. It means I have a chance to survive.